Noble ones, good to see you here. Okay, Kingdom Come Deliverance. Well, it did take me quite a lot of time to make this video, and that is because I had a lot of data to collate. But since I've got a lot of things to say, let's get straight to the point. On this video, we will cover the following points in this order: historical accuracy, gameplay, quests and storyline, graphics, bugs, glitches and areas of improvement. So before going into the details, let me summarize by saying that yes, the game is good, yes, I'm having a lot of fun playing it, and yes, I do advise you noble ones to get it. Now, as you already know, in its current state, the game has a few bugs and glitches and some areas of improvement, but none of these is game-breaking, and I'll deal with them later. Alright, let's start with historical accuracy, the big selling point of this game. So, is Kingdom Come Deliverance somewhat historically accurate? Yes. And in fact, I'd like to say that the game comparatively does a better job at representing medieval weapons, armor and environment than any other game out there, and it's definitely miles above any Hollywood production I've seen, so props to the development team for that. And when I say somewhat historically accurate, well, we have to keep in mind, of course, that 100% historical accuracy would be utter utopia. However, is the game historically accurate in all its major aspects? And I would say no. Since no hardly qualifies as the sardonic banter of the YouTube content creator, I shall hereby indulge you in further detail. The game is not historically accurate, particularly when considering the general clothing of the people, the nobles being the most blatant example, and the armor itself needs work, believe it or not. I'm not nitpicking, there are some major flaws here, not minor, and I'll back up everything I say with actual sources, of course. What the game does get absolutely right are the buildings. They are indeed superb. They look as if they were taken straight out of a medieval manuscript, with the churches and noble residences being richly painted and decorated in contrast to modern belief. But clothing, shoes, the general state in which the clothing of the citizen is, are off. But please keep in mind that I'm not pointing the finger at the developers. I commend them for bringing forth this wonderful project. The points I'm bringing up are there because I see potential in this game and in the Warhorse team, and some things should be changed before we can say that the game is historically accurate in the depiction of medieval people of early 15th century Bohemia. The civil clothing, or the non-military clothing worn by the people you encounter, is probably the part that surprised me the most, as it does not represent early 15th century Czechia or Czech Republic. The waistline should be smaller, thinner, the overall silhouette needs work. Showing underwear is a complete no-go. There are very few examples in medieval manuscripts and iconography, but when underwear is shown, it is always connected to very hard work, like doing field work, for example, in the middle of August, etc., but not in a town where you can get some shade and cool off inside a stone building. These red t-shirt things that they are wearing are not historical. As a third layer, there should be a jacket-like element of clothing, a houppelande or something similar. Medieval people mostly wore 3 layers of clothing: undergarment, normally made of linen, upper garment, normally made of wool, and the third layer could be a jacket-like garment, as I said, which normally has lots of different names, so don't want to confuse you. Interestingly enough, depending on the time period, you would be considered in your underwear if you were only wearing the first and second layer without wearing the third layer. But in game, mostly we see no third layers at all. Laced on sleeves only appear quite a bit later, and even then they wouldn't be laced on so badly with that big of a lace. Stitching also is broad, irregular and absolutely out of place, a typical myth we often see represented in movies, and unfortunately we see that happen here too at times. Medieval people were amazingly good at sewing. Imagine a professional full-time tailor master. He would be so good that his sewing would be almost as good as that of a machine and extremely precise. He could do stitching that you wouldn't even dream of. Of that, I'm absolutely adamant. For more info on this topic, refer to Schola Gladiatoria's video, link in the description below. Also, the knot is wrong, but I think that will be quite a minor detail. Dresses are too short. At minimum, you should just be able to see the tip of the shoe, nothing more. And none of them wears any stockings, which is something a bit strange. You would always be wearing those as a woman. The pointy shoes in the Polish fashion, the Krakows, should appear here and there, as they were rather popular in the 15th century among the nobles and wealthy citizens, as they were worn as early as the 1360s. but we see none in-game. 15th century art shows them being worn by both men and women, with the toes of the men's shoes being the most extravagantly long. We have an actual historical account of these being worn by the nobles of Bohemia, specifically from the marriage of Richard II and Anne of Bohemia in 1382. An anonymous monk of Evesham recorded in 1394. With this queen there came from Bohemia into England those accursed vices, English crackles or pikes, half a yard in length. Thus it was necessary for them to be tied to the shin with chains of silver before they could walk with them. Also, the people in-game tend to have their clothing torn apart, ruined and ragged. I don't mind seeing that in beggars, as we can see it in actual medieval art, but there is no reason whatsoever for the citizen of a medieval town not to repair their clothing and just leave these open, cut limbs and areas in their overall dress or garment. Also because they were actually pretty good at fixing, and they were so good that you would not even be able to see where the garment was torn. Also, shoes with the point up, as we can see sometimes in-game, are not historical whatsoever, they are a reenactorism, and considering the way medieval boots would be sewn from inside out, it would be very difficult to make them that way. On the nobles, well, it's a mess. Utter fantasy. Most of the times, actually. This guy, for example, looks like he's wearing a 16th century inspired fantasy puffy sleeved vest, while this guy here is actually having a go at Viking leather biker gear. Not to mention that those triangles of metal that he's wearing for decoration, well, I think he wears that same clothing under armor, and that would be, oh gosh, don't even want to imagine. Now I can understand they wanted the main characters among the nobles to be recognizable, to stand out, but you have so much variety in actual historical noble clothing that you could have had both character recognition and historical accuracy. Here are some examples of actual noble clothing of the period, keeping in mind functionality was not the main goal of medieval nobility, showing off your status was. Also, leather straps and buckles to close your medieval garments. This is a big no-no, and I want to show you, that I've got the same problem. It's a problem with historical reenactors sometimes, that we do this, and sometimes it's because of budget, okay? And that is my problem. As soon as I have enough money, I will get a proper arming doublet. But these should not be seen, but they appear in-game, so probably they saw some reenactors do it, and I'm guilty myself, and this is why I want to show you this, to say I'm not, judging from on high of my horse. No, that's not what I'm trying to do. But these should not be here. You should either have lacing or buttons. And no, you should not see the crotch. Absolutely not. Big no-no again. As I said, armor looks a lot more believable than the kind of armor we normally see in video games, but I think my major complaint here is that it looks in between historical reenactment and full contact gear. The torso and the cuirasses in-game are too fat. If we look at medieval art, what we see all over the place in the early 15th century is hourglass waist. It would be a lot finer and more tailored than what we see in-game, and therefore no over padding. Here we see almost no thin waist, if not sometimes occasionally a slight touch, and the characters are overly padded, which is typical of full contact gear. Not actual medieval war gear or battlefield armor. To me, it seems as if they did not use medieval treatises and manuscripts as a source, but instead used reenactors and full contact guys as a basis. Now that's a problem, because what happens with reenactors, for example, is that you get one reenactor who wants to be special, and so he finds this feature for his armor, which is, yes, historical, but exotic, rare. And then other people copy him because they think that looks cool, and what you end up with in reenactment fairs is that the exception becomes the norm, and this is what we see here. For instance, this bassinet everybody's wearing, which looks like the Wallace collection, quite famous, and has both a hinge for a club visor and side hinges, which would be really strange and exotic altogether, I mean. But here, it's the norm. Not to mention that if you actually were to use all three hinges at the same time, you couldn't actually physically open the visor. But even if what they meant there was you can switch visors, still very, very odd. I think they should remove the clap visor and just leave the lateral hinges. Oh, and another minor detail. With weapons, well, first off, the final polish on most swords looks unfinished. And also they look like modern reenactment checkmate swords, to be honest. There should be more polearms, and they look a bit flimsy, to be honest. Falchions are actually used the wrong way. Basically, for some reasons, the people using and swinging falchions, they try to cut with the blunt side of the blade rather than with the edge. And that is a major mistake. You did it backwards. No scabbards for all bladed weapons, exception being the swords, and that is a big no-no. All bladed weapons should have a sheath. You should not have naked blades hanging from your belt, but that again happens, and it is a reenactorism. There are no crossbows, and I really don't understand why. I mean, I can appreciate they have a limited budget, but then forget the bows and put the crossbows on. We are talking about the Kingdom of Bohemia. It was a crossbow country. If bows were missing and crossbows were present, it would have been a lot closer to accuracy than removing crossbows altogether to leave space for bows. Not to mention handheld firearms should also be present if we consider that during the Hussite Wars, 1419, 1434, they were used. These conflicts were notable for the extensive use of early handheld firearms such as hand cannons. As I said at first, I suggest this game to all of you noble ones because I know that you appreciate historical accuracy, and this game does a lot of things right, even though on this video I'm focusing on the things that need improvement, but there are a lot of aspects of the game that really set it aside from other video games, and any history enthusiast and any history buff like you and me are going to enjoy the game. The game has a certain level of addiction as well, has the classical RPG slow line of progression curve that really gives you reward whenever you get better equipment, whenever you get new weapons, and whenever you get new abilities and skills. So the game is a lot of fun to play, and I think that is the most important part. All the rest are things that can be patched, are things that can be modded, and are things that can be changed. And I believe some should, like crossbows. Like, please, come on. But let me get one thing straight. There are some gamers out there that I wouldn't suggest this game to, and that is those people who like being that their character is a god amongst men. Okay, well that is games such as For Honor. I mean, you can completely butcher everyone who's not a hero like you. Games like The Witcher, you know, superhuman, incredible power, you know, 5, 8, 10 people against you, no problem. This game is not like that. With this game, when you begin, you're a complete, utter, useless muppet. But what's fun about this game is that the more you play, the more you go through the game, the more you start actually making money. And that currency, I have no idea how to pronounce it, nor do I want to learn it, but I can say Jakui. It takes some time, but you can turn your character from this, you know, the son of a smith who is a bit lazy, a bit slothful, doesn't really know what he's doing. You can turn him into a very well equipped and really highly skilled man at arms. And that is good because it really, and that's something I like, okay? I like the idea of my character now is strong, but still humanly strong, okay? Never superhuman. My character is now strong and I can take on other people because I know how to fight. I've actually mastered the skills myself. I have increased my attributes because it's a role-playing game at the end of the day. And I've got good gear, and that makes the difference in this game. So if you don't mind sacrificing feeling overpowered for historical accuracy and the idea of doing it yourself on your own, then yes, this is the game for you. But if you like games where you just move forward and destroy everything that stands in the way, then no, that's not a game for you, and you're going to find the fighting system frustrating. But where the game really shines are quests and the main storyline, both the main quests and the side quests, because this is something that really made the game stand out. I've played loads of role-playing games, both online and offline, and we do know that normally offline video games get better storyline and quests than online video games. I mean, if you look at the Elder Scrolls series, for example, Skyrim, Oblivion, they had better quests than, for example, ESO or Elder Scrolls Online. I know that that was not developed ultimately by Bethesda, I understand that, but the quests were absolutely lame. They felt repetitive, they felt pointless. I remember this quest of, there was this lad, this bloke just there standing in front of a cave, and he asked me, can you go and fetch this item for me? It's in this cave. And so I walk 10 meters, enter the cave, in the first room, find this object, here comes a boss, kill him, 1 piece of gold, go back, and it was really, really stupid. This game instead not only, I would say, compares in the quality of the quests with great titles like Skyrim, Oblivion, and even more so Morrowind, which probably had the best storyline I've ever played, but I gotta say that sometimes it's even better. And what I mean by that is that each single quest, including side quests, they feel like I'm watching an episode from a well-written TV series or drama. So I can see that they have spent a lot of detail and a lot of time into getting the quests right, making them feel interesting, making them feel that each one it's its own story. And I think that that is a very important aspect of the game, because as far as I'm concerned, you give me a combat system that works, you give me very beautiful armor I can collect, I'm sorry, but I'm absolutely obsessed with armor, as you can understand, and the storyline feels like I am really, feels interesting, intriguing. I want to know how it ends, what's going to happen next. If you get all of this together, these are the good, important ingredients for a successful video game. So again, props to the development team for spending so much time into the details that made the quests in the game very interesting and fun to play. Now, after having said all these nice things, well, sorry, but I need to rant a little bit, because I'm not just saying nice things, I'm saying what I think. The horse. Warhorse Studio, you need to fix your warhorse. First, it's not a warhorse, I'll get back to that in a minute. Secondly, when you ride the horse, yes, the animation feels good, it looks good. I mean, I'm not an expert, but as a gamer, general gamer, you know, it feels okay, it feels believable. I like the fact that I can look down, see my body, which doesn't happen in the Elder Scrolls. So again, a big point, I haven't seen my body in a first-person game since the times of Gothic 3. So I appreciate that. I can see my Milanese gauntlets, you know, and all of that, it's cool. But when I ride the horse, particularly in full gallop, a lot of times it happens to me that the horse gets stuck. It gets stuck in a lot of things, it gets stuck in a lot of vegetation, and I understand it might be more, you could say, realistic, but other times it's not realistic. It gets stuck in stupid places. If there is a little bit of a dome, the horse gets stuck. It happened to me a lot of times, and it feels like when I'm going through a forest, it's a frigging torment. Not easy to do. So I think maybe I don't know, I'm not a developer, I don't know how to fix this or how much of a hassle it would be, but I think it needs to be fixed. The horse need to ignore more obstacles on the ground. Perhaps you can make sure that some obstacles are real only if you are on foot, but if you are on horseback, then some things shouldn't, because you are galloping, you're enjoying your speed, and then you get stuck so many times that it's really annoying. So I think that should be fixed. But what really drives me nuts about the horse is that, as I said, it's not a warhorse created by the Warhorse Studio. And what I mean by that is that try to fight with the horse. First off, we know that archery is problematic, but I think they're patching that. So, no problem. Because at the moment, the hitting a target with your bow is impossible. And we're not talking about impossible because, some people will say, well, just get good. That's not the problem. I'm all for, get good. Here, I mean, if I am missing a target that is 3 meters from me 20 times in a row, there is something wrong with the hitbox, I think. And a similar situation happens on horseback. That's even worse. I have no idea how the Cuman at first, in the beginning of the story, manages to hit me while we are both riding horses. No idea. I must have been the Cuman version of Robin Hood. But as far as I'm concerned, I can't hit anything with my bow. I've actually given up. So never mind archery on horseback. Hitting with your sword from horseback, again, the hitbox is too small. I can't hit them. And that is why I think they should introduce lances. You need to introduce lances and crossbows. And I think it can be done. I mean, Mountain Blade got it right. I think you can get it right as well, considering that you are an amazing developing team. So please get lances, because at the moment, whenever I see a bandit, I need to get off my horse. Otherwise, no chance. I'm going to stay there 15 minutes and the guy's going to run away. And talking about running away, there was this bandit who was, running away, understandably, considering the fact that I was better equipped. I was all bloody. I had a sword in my hand, which was high quality. So it's like, yeah, not a chance. I'm running away. Fine. I've got a horse. I'm going to ride my horse and I'm going to chase him. Since, hitting him with my sword was basically impossible, I thought, I'm just going to run over him, right? But no, the horse in full gallop has 0 damage the moment you impact anything. It doesn't matter. You impact him with your horse in full gallop and the hoofs of the horse do nothing. The guy just keeps on running. No, Okay, this needs to be solved. It's unacceptable. Particularly because, I mean, Warhorse Studio, come on, get your Warhorse right, please. Not to mention, and for this one I really need help to keep calm. I love this game to bits, but there was one thing that happened that almost made me rage quit. So here I am. I'm all happy because I've just bought my first set of armour. I've been wearing full mail for a while now, and I finally spent almost 800 groszy to friends into my plate armour. Okay, so I'm wearing plate now, I'm all happy, and I want to show my community. So what do? I go out and I want to take a screenshot. The thing is, the game is in first person, so in order to see third person, I decided to talk to the first person, to the first guy that I see in front of me, and that happens to be a peasant. No problem, think I, and I push the button, the screen goes black, comes back again, and it's the very same Muppet who, you remember the one at first in the game, in the very first village, that he needs to pay for your father's tools and he doesn't? Well, that's the Muppet. Anyways, he starts insulting me. He's like, you couldn't do anything because you're a Muppet. Your father is dead and it's none of my concern. So of course I get a little upset, you see. Well, think about it. I like role-playing games. This Muppet here, he survived. My father died. And now he's joking about it. And you know what? I'm wearing full plate armor, he's wearing a peasant t-shirt. I've got lots of weapons, I work for the nobility now, so he needs to show respect, I think. And I tell him, I use the little option there, and I tell him, well, stop talking like that or else. And I think, he's gonna stop, but oh no, he goes in guard and is like, alright then, let's bring it on. And we start fighting. Up to that, well, a suicidal peasant can happen, but no, he kicked the trash out of me. I don't mind losing. I don't mind losing against a well-equipped knight. No problem, I actually appreciate it. But being kicked and destroyed by this medieval peasant, barehanded, who frigging punched my plate armor, underneath which I had mail armor, gambeson, a full bassinet, and he still destroys me. I punch him with steel gauntlets and he blocks as if it was nothing. Who was he? Medieval version of Bruce Lee? I frigging ran into flaming Batman. No, really, this needs to be fixed. If a guy, barehanded, starts punching you, wearing full plate, he needs to receive damage. He needs to break his hand after a couple of strikes. And even the developer, he was all about, how weapons, swords are not effective against armor. You need to use a warhammer. Well, I'd like to add all your bare hands because they work. I need some pasta. Not to mention, he actually dented it. He dealt so much damage you can even see it. Plate, breastplate, all of this because I wanted a screenshot. The breastplate is dented. I had to go back to the armory and pay 60 gold pieces, which is a lot of money, to fix. What the heck did he have in his hands? Mind you, I didn't even have that money. Why? Because while we were brawling outside in the streets, a guard actually stopped me and I had to pay a fine. So not only was my armor destroyed by a peasant barehanded, I got a fine from a guard and now I don't have the money to pay the armor. What a mess. The saving system. Now the problem I have with the saving system is not really the concept itself, because I understand they chose it to increase immersion, meaning that, you need to use a lockpick, you need to think about it a few times, you need to make sure, to maximize the percentage of success, because if you get failure, if you fail, then people are going to catch you and you can't load back up the save pointer that you made just beforehand. So that's cool. Problem is that I don't think it's suited for this game. Why? Because the bugs and the glitches, the game crashes. So a game that at the moment is unstable, and it's unstable, you can't correlate it with a saving system that doesn't allow you to save whenever you want. And since in this game there is a lot of walking, there is a lot of traveling, which I don't mind. I like, it's beautiful scenery, no problem. But if to get from point A to point B to fulfill the mission, it took me 20 minutes or 15 minutes of walking. And then the moment I get there, maybe I draw my sword, something happens, the game crashes and I need to do it all over again. It's boring, okay? So it's a problem. Now, of course, if you do manage to get to make the game more stable, then it could make sense. Okay, it's okay. But again, the problem I have with it is that the game has a high rate of mortality. It's very easy to die if you face 2 bandits instead of 1 and you're not properly equipped. You will die. And even if you are properly equipped, if there is numerical superiority, it's still gonna be tough. And I like that. But the fact that you can so easily die, the fact that if you skip a ladder and you just jump, you can crash your ankles, and then it's gonna be a problem because you need to have bandage if you're bleeding or you will die. All of this, it's fantastic, but it cannot live well with a saving system that does not allow you to save whenever you want, okay? Or you can have like 2 hours of gameplay with no saving for whatever reason, and then something happens. Now, I know people are going to bring up the beds, but first off, some beds are bugged. For example, at least on PS4, which is the system I'm using, on PS4 you cannot save in the bed of the miller. So where you are there with Theresa. And by the way, talking about Theresa, I don't know how to pronounce it. Don't you see who she is? I mean, come on. Vikings, it's the girl, the princess from Paris. The savior of Paris. It's her, come on. And she's a fine woman, so I appreciate that. But come on, blatant. But that bed doesn't work. It does not save. I tried it quite a few times. It does not work. Other beds, yes, they do, but still, depending on where you are, depending on what mission you're doing. For example, there's a hunting mission where you're going all the way up, and then you need to find where the heck this frigging nobleman went, and it takes time to find him. If the game crashes or a bandit arrives, or when you're fighting and then you die, I'm sorry, but I don't want to do that over and over and over again just because I couldn't save. I just want to save before I feel that there is something fishy in the air. So what I think, since not everyone thinks like me, I think the majority agrees with me, but since not everyone agrees with me, I think what you should do is either in the options or at the beginning of the game, you can choose saving system, standard, realistic. I'm going to go for standard, but it needs to be able to be chosen also because, again, I'm not a full-time gamer. Okay, I've got a job, I've got clients. So, and I had like half an hour, 1 hour before the client arrives and I'm playing, but then my client shows up early and he starts ringing the bell. What am I supposed to do? I mean, I can't save or I have to waste money to pay for the alcoholic drinks that you need to save. I'm going to have to be penalized because I've got a life. No, it doesn't work. So again, if you are choosing it deliberately, so I chose that I want to play the realistic saving system, then fine, it's up to me. Like in Diablo 3, where you can choose the one that if you die, your character is dead. It's a choice, it's cool. Some people enjoy it, no problem. But if you can do that because you already know that you've got like, I don't know, a month of holiday, and you can just dedicate to the game, absolutely. But for other people who, like us, that we need to be able to stop playing, to quit the game without having to pay for it, pay in game currency, of course, or losing the progress, then I think saving systems should be changed, but I believe they are patching that. Okay, there is one thing that little bugs me a bit, is the over-religious feel the game has, and it's similar to what they have done in Vikings, the TV series, where every single Norse is like a born-again Norse, if you will. I mean, they're always like, look, the sea's beautiful, the gods did it. Look, the terrain is very nice today, the gods may be praised. So that's how I think that's a bit too much. And on this game, it's a similar situation. It's as if medieval people were they were all talking about religion. They were always mentioning religious things. It's a bit too much. I don't think, rather than giving me the idea of I'm in a medieval community, it makes me feel like I'm in the midst of the medieval version of an evangelical Christian community. They're just missing the guitars and then you've got them. So I think, yes, some people could be like that. Perhaps, I don't know, some religious ministers could be like that, although the priest in this game is anything but religious. But yeah, you know what I'm saying. And some people can be like that, or perhaps in a moment of distress when your loved ones have died, and then yes, you can turn to God. That makes sense. But every single person is like this. I mean, let me give you an example of how my character is going to buy an apple in this game. Hello, mate. Can I get an apple? Jesus Christ be praised! Yeah, right, absolutely, yes. Talking about the apple. May the Lord bless you, Almighty God! Undoubtedly, yeah, praise. I mean, look at the apple. It must have taken forever to create it. Yeah, absolutely. For the price. Holy Mary bless you all and your family. Okay. I'm gonna go. God be with you! Now, since we're talking about the dialogue, so here is a problem. With this, I got to side with Scalagrim in the fact that those annoying 3 seconds that you've got this fade out, the screen goes black, then fade in, talk to the person, stop talking, fade out again, fade in, back to the game, and then you forgot, oh gosh, I needed to buy that thing as well, so push on him again, Jesus Christ be praised, fade out, all is black. You know, it's doesn't work, I think, and I don't understand why it happens, because in games like Skyrim, in games like Oblivion, it never happens. You just push and it changes the perspective, but you don't have this black screen. So that, and those 3 seconds you need to wait. And within the dialogues as well, sometimes they say something and then they will just wait a few seconds, and all of this is wasted time, and it does turn you into the ingoing sort of closed off type version of yourself, because you do wish to try to keep these dialogues to the minimum. So that is something that I think they should patch or fix. Let me give you an example of how a discussion often happens, how you talk to people in game. Hello? Hello, Henry. What do you think of the governor? Yes, I think he's doing a good job, the governor. Goodbye. So what about the idea of, you gotta eat, my friend, you gotta sleep. If you don't eat for a very long time, you will die. And if you don't sleep for a very long time, you're going to experience so many penalties and problems that you will eventually have to sleep. Now, I don't know if he actually eventually does faint. I think it would be cool if he did. But anyhow, these are two mechanics that make the gameplay a bit more difficult, but I really like them. Again, it was a little bit of a brave move, a bold move from them, because some people don't enjoy those things, but I do, and I'm very happy. I like the fact that he needs to eat. I like the fact that he reminds me, he's like, I could use a bite to eat, and that sort of thing. It's really cool, and I like the fact that you gotta sleep. It really feels like you are living there in the Middle Ages. Very good idea, so big thumbs up for that idea. I really appreciate it. So, we have had a little rant. I said the things that I did not like as well, so I was very blunt from that point of view, but I do wish to say something nice about the developers, and the fact that I've seen quite a few people getting really angry with the day one condition of the release. And yes, I can understand that some bugs can be immersion breaking. Yeah, there can be immersion breaking, but again, there are no game breaking bugs, and I think we should give a little bit of slack to the developers. And you know why? The reason is that, first off, yes, it's a day one release. I mean, this is an indie studio. Do we even have to mention games such as Mass Effect Andromeda? I mean, even Battlefield 4 at release was absolutely unplayable. But of course, some people might say, but they might argue and say, yes, they had a huge budget, so that even if they are an indie studio, they have a lot of people working for them. And I will say, well, that depends, because I was invited by the studio. I went to Prague, I went into the studio, I've actually met their historian, very nice girl, and she's really good. Okay, so don't get me wrong. In fact, I don't actually, when I say that something is not historically accurate, I do not think it's their fault. I think it's that they put too much, the development team put a bit too much responsibility on top of their shoulders. I think a team would have been better, because she's really good. I know that she's like specialized in, I think, was it like art history, something like that, buildings and structures, something like that. But anyways, these buildings are fantastic, I can see that. But just because you're an historian doesn't mean that you know how pointy the shoes of medieval people were in 15th century Czechia, and you got to understand all of that within a certain given time. So I'm not attacking the historian, she's very nice. I believe she's also a noble one, to be honest, but I went to the studio, and yes, it's a nice studio. They have quite a bit of people, but it's nothing compared to the massive studios. So when you have an indie studio, what you've got to understand is that the work that one person does, okay, one of the many people working there, is probably what 10 people, 8 people or 5 people would have done in a massive studio. So these guys have a lot of pressure on them, and I think that they've already managed to make a very good video game. But still, would this day one release be acceptable if they weren't willing to patch it? No, I would be the first one to say, guys, let's get that money back. But they showed us that they are willing to correct these things. I mean, 23 gigabytes of patch, a lot of people complained about that, but that means a lot of work. okay? Because please remember that they had to present the game to Sony or, for example, Microsoft 3 months before the release date. So the day one edition is how the game state in November, okay? But the fact that there were 23 gigabytes means that for the remaining 3 months they kept on working, and that is something that I think is respectable. I respect that. So as long as they fix these things, I say no problem, okay? And in fact there are 2 really hefty patches coming out soon, so it's fine, you know, even if it takes them a little bit of time, no problem, at least not for me. I understand. Fix these problems, and since they are showing that they are willing to fix it and put more work, I can appreciate that, and I'm also willing to pay a little bit of money for good DLCs that could extend the story or provide more content. So let's not be too harsh on the development team. I think they're doing a good job. Alright, noble ones, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron. If you would like me to make some gameplay videos, so videos of me actually going through the game, playing, trying to get that frigging Milanese full plate armor harness, then let me know in the comments below, and if I see a lot of requests and this video gets a reasonable amount of likes, then yes, I will make a series of me actually playing Kingdom Come Deliverance, and perhaps even do some streaming on my Twitch account. You can find a link in the description below. Thank you very much for watching. A big hello and thank you to the Warhorse Studio for making this wonderful game that is stealing all of my life and social life. But then again, thank you guys, and I hope you enjoyed the game if you do decide to purchase it. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.